It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That is brand new stuff from an album called A Leap Through Matter. The name of that tune was simply Traveler. And on the line right now, we have the bassist of the band Flight that recorded that song and a bunch of others that made A Leap Through Matter. It is bassist Jonas Bye. Jonas, how are you, man?
I'm good. And you?
Good, man. Can't complain. It's always better when I've got a really good rock and metal record, in front of me to listen to that's, fresh to my ears, man. And, as I told you right before we started, man, the record is very cool, man. It's a very refreshing listen to hear.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. It's really nice with all the good feedback we've been getting. You're super happy with the album, so it's nice to hear that.
Sure.
Other people like it as well.
Absolutely, man. Well, Jonas, for people that don't know, and I'll admit that up until about 3 weeks ago, I was one of these people. So why don't we start with getting just a brief history of the band, how long you've been together and how the band came to be?
Yeah, well, we started up, I think it was the fall of 2012. It was myself, the vocalist guitarist Christopher, and our first drummer Herman. We got together and actually made probably 6 out of 8 songs on the debut within just a few months. It went super fast in the beginning, and we found out that we needed a second guitarist, of course, and we're playing heavy metal. You got to have those twin leads and trade-off solos. So we contacted a friend of ours, Christian from Purple Hill Witch, and he's been with us since.
Okay.
And yeah, so the first album was made super fast, probably a bit too fast. Okay. Maybe nothing too critical with ourselves, but I guess that's how it always is in the beginning. And we played a few shows and did everything like that with that first lineup. And after we recorded the debut album, but before it was released, the drummer quit. So we got our friend Christian from Necromantian in the band. So now we have 3 Chris's in the same band.
Right.
So everybody has their own nickname, so we can tell them apart.
Sure.
And we've been working on the second album ever since we got the new drummer in, and it took a while, but finally we had some time to reflect and be a little bit more self-critical and work on the songs a lot more before we said to ourselves that they were finished. And I think we grew a lot because of that, and
sure.
Super happy with the result.
Right. Well, and I have to say, Jonas, from listening to the record, what's unique about it to me is that it has, this retro feel to it, but not necessarily there's a retro movement that's out there right now, which, there's a bunch of bands, and I'm sure you're aware of that, but they're almost more in that stoner rock vein where you guys aren't. You guys have a retro feel that, at least to me, sounds a lot more like late 70s Judas Priest than it does any kind of stoner rock. Is that just what you guys were all influenced by, or is that just what you were trying to create, or is that just how it came together naturally?
I think all of those. Definitely influenced by Judas Priest, and especially the 70s material. And it's not that much about having riffs that sounds the same. It's more about how you approach the riff, I guess. Like if you have a song like Metal Gods, even though it's not from the 70s,
right?
It's just a super basic chord progression, like 3 different chords, but you play them. You don't move your hand up and down the neck, and you just kind of use the depth of the neck. And I don't even know the terms, but just kind of that kind of approach to how we play the riffs. So it's a lot of like high string action within the chords.
Right.
which makes them sound a bit, or you get more depth to it, to the music, I guess.
Okay.
It's not that flat. Yeah, so definitely super inspired by 70s Judas Priest, and also a lot of prog rock from the 70s, and uh, bands like Thin Lizzy and stuff like that.
Sure. Is it
And
has it been difficult for you, especially as a new band? Is it difficult to, to get your start and to find gigs when you're not doing, when you're not just doing covers, and when you're not doing, trendy music, when you're doing something that definitely has a throwback feel like what you're doing?
I wouldn't say it's really hard. It's more about how much effort you put into it. And
Okay.
we've not been very good in that regard, but it's not the main thing about our band either. Playing a lot around, but at least in Europe, it's so much smaller than the States, and you can drive from one big city to the next one in like 2 hours.
Okay.
A lot of the time, especially in Germany and Central Europe. Uh, so if you have a small tour going, you can get through most of Europe pretty fast. It's
Okay.
not like you drive for 8 hours
Right.
at night. So I guess it's more how much effort you put into it and what's the goal of the band. And yeah.
Okay. Now, with the new record, and like I told you before, man, it's got this cool feel to it. It's the thing that I think is interesting is that it's got that sound, and I know we're making band comparisons, but I would just make like a kind of a substance comparison. It sounds more like the music that was made basically before MTV, where it became more image over the substance. It sounds like you guys spend a lot of time, or at least on this record, spent a lot of time crafting these songs together. How long did it take you, working on these songs and putting together the arrangements for each song?
I mean, it took a lot of time. For example, Traveler, as you mentioned earlier, it was basically one of the first songs we started on after the debut was finished. And it was maybe the last song that we finished. So over a period of 2 years, we just kept working on it. And I think that's a super important aspect of not being satisfied, or if you're able to finish something and step away from it and look at it again later on and with a fresh perspective, that helps a lot. And I think we did that with most of the record. We spent a lot of time just going through the things, and like just being open for suggestions and not being too stubborn because you made this particular riff. You don't want your friend to
Change it.
like, yeah, exactly. And we didn't have that attitude for this record, at least. So I think that helped a lot.
Sure. Do you feel that that's a change that you made from the debut to now, that you guys work more as a band than you did for the first record?
I'd say the writing process is similar as with the first one. It's either Christopher, the vocalist guitarist, or myself that makes a song, and then we introduce it in the band setting. But this time we spent a lot more time in that band setting and being open for changes and just discussing everything. And so, yeah, that main process, like being together as a band, working on it, and like just disintegrating the arrangements and like pulling all the pieces into a new picture was super important for this album.
Sure. Now, one of the things that is different between the debut release and this new one is that you have a new record company with High Roller Records. What did they provide you that might have been missing, from your previous label that you worked with?
Mostly just a really good channel of communication. The, that's been the main issue for us. We're super happy to work with High Roller, and they're just really easy to work with. And of course, if you look at their backup catalog with just a really good mix of good new bands and good releases from old classics, it's definitely a good place to have our album out on.
Sure, definitely. Now, Jonas, you're no stranger to this being in the music world. For everybody, really, music has become free. In with your Spotify or your YouTube Music or Apple Music, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these streaming services out there. For a new band like Flight, or a newer band like Flight, does that make it easier to find people to discover your music, or does it make it harder because there's so many more bands that are out there, some deserving, some not, but they do take attention away from a band like yours?
Yeah, of course. There's both sides to that. I guess most of it is positive. Like, I use Spotify pretty much every day. At least when I'm at work, it's so easy to just have like the whole world's catalog
right
within a few clicks. So that's really convenient, and especially with Bandcamp, I think that's a really good platform for bands. You can sell your music directly to the fans, and it's not like with Apple Music and iTunes and everything like that, where you get like 1 cent for 1,000 plays,
right,
or something like that. There's no money in it. It's just, you just have to look at it as a way of promoting yourself, having your music on Spotify.
Sure.
If you're not Rihanna, you won't get any money from it.
Right, but have you found that it has introduced you to a lot of people that you might not otherwise have reached?
Yeah, I think so. We're really bad at promotion, so and with Bandcamp, you can see the sales coming in and people picking up the LP or just getting a digital copy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we reach a lot more people than we would if we had to do everything ourselves.
Sure. No,
and
definitely.
And of course, if you follow your friend on Bandcamp or Facebook or whatever, and he makes the purchase, you can see what he's been buying or listening to and check it out. So I think it's a really good platform.
Cool.
And most of the revenue there goes directly back to the band.
Oh.
Of course, Bandcamp take their little cut, but
yeah.
Hey,
giving a cut of something is better than keeping all of nothing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Well, Jonas, you guys are from what? You're in Norway, right?
Yeah.
How has that scene? How is that scene now today for live music and for rock/metal like you're making? Is it a good scene? Is it strong?
Like for music or rock or metal in general, it's pretty good, I'd say. There's waves of bands coming and disappearing all the time, and I think maybe the scene was a little bit more active like 4 years ago than it is today, but it's still a lot of life here, and just within in the city, even though it's a really small city for a capital, still have lots of quality bands. Like Obliteration had their new album out in November, and Black Viper, speed metal band, just released the best album in years.
Right.
Even like top notch stuff. So there's some some things happening around, but with our style of heavy rock or heavy metal or what you want to call it, I wouldn't say there's a lot happening.
Okay.
You have a band like Black Magic, but they're not really active and still waiting for their new album.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's definitely more happening in Sweden, which is really close. So it kind of feels like it's the same country. They
Sure.
just talk a little bit different.
Sure, and it definitely seems like the Swedish are definitely still way more tuned into that power rock and power metal sound than maybe Norway. And again, I'm speaking from the United States. From the United States perspective, first thing we think of when we think of Norway and metal is black metal. You know, we're thinking of, you know,
Yeah.
Borknagar and stuff like that might be coming out of there. You know, not necessarily, you know, stuff like you do.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of more extreme metal, and I think every member of Flight has been involved in some kind of extreme metal, so it's not like we're unfamiliar with that.
Sure.
With that side either. But yeah, when we're comparing Sweden and Norway, it's kind of funny. I did this thing on Metal Archives, and I went to check out like how many registered releases did Sweden have under the banner heavy metal in the 80s.
Okay.
And like from 1980 to 1989. And it was like 200 or 300. And I did the same thing with Norway, and it was like 20.
Wow.
And that's demos and everything. So yeah, Norway has never been really big in that genre.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, Jonas, you know, you obviously have this great new record, "A Leap Through Matter," that is out. Are you gonna have the chance to get out there and tour through 2019 to promote it, or do you go right back to the studio and write another record, or what does it look like for you guys?
We will not tour, but we might do some shows.
Okay.
We're still rehearsing, or we rehearsed before we recorded the album, and then we didn't play together for a long time while we were waiting for it and like, being busy with other projects, other bands. And now as the record is released, we're rehearsing these songs again to see if we can do them justice in a live setting. And because we did a lot of layers with the guitars on this one, there's parts that has 3, 4, 5 different guitar layers at once, but we only have 2 guitarists, so it's kind of hard to recreate that song or that specific part as a band outside of the studio. So we're just trying to see how good we can do it, and like we don't want to like butcher the songs.
Right. That makes sense, man. Well, Jonas, the record is called "A Leap Through Matter." The band is called Flight. And Jonas, as a tradition on the Classic Metal Show, we always try to wrap up each interview by having the artist pick the closing track and maybe tell us a story about it. So what would you like us to play to wrap this interview up, and maybe tell us a, quick story about writing it or what it means to you or something?
Okay, so I'll choose a song from our record.
Okay.
Or is that open?
No, that's fine. That's what we want.
Okay. Yeah, that's a hard one. I think I'll go with "Leave the Coast." It's the end of the album, so it's a good finale for an interview, I guess. And it's one of the faster ones, and I think it's one of the ones that stands out most on the album.
All right, well, let's check it out right now. It is Flight right here on your Classic Metal Show.